Squirrel Squad. Boy, is it a rainy, nasty, cold day here in central North Carolina. We are reading Little Men. I almost said He-Man. Chapter 8, Pranks and Plays. As there is no particular plan to the story except to describe a few scenes in the life at Plumfield for the amusement of certain little persons, and big persons, we will gently ramble along in this chapter and tell some of the pastimes of Mrs. Joe's boys. I beg leave to assure my honored readers that most of the incidents are taken from real life, and that the oddest are the truest, for no person, no matter how vivid an imagination he may have, can invent anything half so droll as the freaks and fancies that originate in the lively brains of little people. Daisy and Demi were full of these whims and lived in a world of their own, peopled with lovely or grotesque creatures to whom they gave the queerest names and with whom they played the queerest games. One of these nursery inventions was an invisible spirit called the Naughty Kitty Mouse. Naughty Kitty Mouse, whom the children had believed in, feared, and served for a long time. They seldom spoke of it to anyone else, kept their rights as private as possible, and as they never tried to describe it even to themselves, this being had a vague, mysterious charm very agreeable to Demi, who delighted in elves and goblins. A most whimsical and tyrannical imp was the Naughty Kitty Mouse, and Daisy found a fearful pleasure in its service, blindly obeying its most absurd demands, which were usually proclaimed from the lips of Demi, whose powers of invention were great. Rob and Teddy sometimes joined in these ceremonies and considered them excellent fun, although they did not understand half that went on. One day after school, Demi whispered to his sister with an ominous wag of the head, "The Kitty Mouse wants us this afternoon." "For what?" asked Daisy anxiously. "A sacrifice," answered Demi solemnly. "There must be a fire behind the big rock at 2:00, and we must all bring the things we like best and burn them," he added, with an awful emphasis on the last words. "Oh dear, I love the new paper dollies Aunt Amy painted for me best of anything. Must I burn them up?" cried Daisy, who never thought of denying the unseen tyrant anything it demanded. "Every one. I shall burn my boat, my best scrapbook, and all my soldiers," said Demi firmly. "Well, I will, but it's too bad a kitty mouse to want our very nicest things," sighed Daisy. "A sacrifice means to give up what you are fond of, so we must," explained Demi, to whom the new idea had been suggested by hearing Uncle Fritz describe the customs of the Greeks to the big boys who were reading about them in school. "Is Rob coming too?" asked Daisy. "Yes, and he is going to bring his toy village. It is all made of wood, you know, and will burn nicely. We'll have a grand bonfire and see them blaze up, won't we?" This brilliant prospect consoled Daisy, and she ate her dinner with a row of paper dolls before her as a sort of farewell banquet. Jimmy's getting like, nap. At the appointed hour, the sacrificial train set forth, each child bearing the treasures demanded by the insatiable Kitty Mouse. Teddy insisted on going also, and seeing that all the others had toys, he tucked a squeaking lamb under one arm and old Annabella under the other, little dreaming what anguish the latter idol was to give him. "Where are you going, my chickens?" asked Mrs. Joe as the flock passed her door. "To play by the big rock, can't we?" "Yes, only don't go near the pond, and take good care of baby." "I always do," said Daisy, leading forth her charge with a capable air. "Now you must all sit round and not move till I tell you. The flat stone is an altar, and I'm going to make a fire on it." Dimmy then proceeded to kindle up a small blaze as he had seen the boys do at picnics. When the flame burned well, he ordered the company to march around it 3 times and then stand in a circle. "I shall begin, and as fast as my things are burnt, you must bring yours." With that, he solemnly laid on a little paper book full of pictures pasted in by himself. This was followed by a dilapidated boat, and then one by one the unhappy leaden soldiers marched to death. Not one faltered or hung back from the splendid red and yellow captain to the small drummer who had lost his legs. All vanished in the flames and mingled in one common pool of melted lead. "Now, Daisy," called the high priest of Kitty Mouse, when his rich offerings had been consumed, to the great satisfaction of the children. "My dear dollies, how can I let them go?" moaned Daisy, hugging the entire dozen with a face full of maternal woe. "You must," commanded Demi, and with a farewell kiss to each one, Daisy laid her blooming dolls upon the coals. "Let me keep one, the dear blue thing. She's so sweet," besought the poor little mama, clutching her last in despair. "More, more," growled an awful voice, and Demi cried, "That's the Kitty Mouse. She must have every one quick, or she will scratch us." In went the precious bluebell, flounces, rosy hat and all, and nothing but a few black flakes remained of that bright band. "Stand the houses and trees around and let them catch themselves. It will be like a real fire then," said Demi, who liked variety even in his sacrifices. Spelled Sakerryfices. Sacrifice. Charmed by this suggestion, the children arranged the doomed village, laid a line of coals along the main street, and then sat down to watch the conflagration. Here's that word again. It was somehow slow to kindle, owing to the paint, but at last one ambitious little cottage blazed up, fired a tree of the palm species, which fell onto the roof of a large family mansion, and in a few minutes the whole town was burning merrily. The wooden the wooden population stood and stared at the destruction like blockheads, as they were, till they also caught and blazed away without a cry. It took some time to reduce the town to ashes, and the lookers-on enjoyed the spectacle immensely, cheering as each house fell, dancing like wild Indians when the steeple flamed aloft, and actually casting one wretched little churn-shaped lady who had escaped to the suburbs into the very heart of the fire. The superb success of this last offering excited Teddy to such a degree that he first threw his lamb into the conflagration, and before it had time even to roast, he planted poor Annabella on the funeral pyre. Of course, she did not like it and expressed her anguish and resentment in a way that terrified her infant destroyer. But being covered with kid, she did not blaze, but did what was worse. She squirmed. First one leg curled up, and then the other, in a very awful and lifelike manner. Next, she flung her arms over her head as if in great agony. Her head itself turned on her shoulders. Her glass eyes fell out, and with one final writhe of her whole body, she sank down, a blackened mass, on the ruins of the town. This unexpected demonstration startled everyone and frightened Teddy half out of his little wits. He looked and screamed and fled toward the house, roaring, "Mar, mar!" at the top of his voice. Mrs. Bear heard the outcry and ran to the rescue, but Teddy could only cling to her and pour out in his broken way something about poor Bella hurted, a drake fire, and all the dollies darn. Fearing some dire mishap, his mother called him up and hurried to the scene of action, where she found the blind worshippers of Kitty Mouse mourning over the charred remains of the lost darling. "What have you been at? Tell me all about it," said Mrs. Joe, composing herself to listen patiently, for the culprits looked so penitent she forgave them beforehand. With some reluctance, Demi explained their play, and Aunt Joe laughed till the tears ran down her cheeks. The children were so solemn and the play was so absurd. "I thought you were too sensible to play such a silly game as this. If I had any Kitty Mouse, I'd have a good one who liked you to play in safe, pleasant ways and not destroy and frighten. Just see what a ruin you have made. All Daisy's pretty dolls, Demi's soldiers, and Rob's new village, beside poor Teddy's pet lamb and dear old Annabella. I shall have to write up in the nursery the verse that used to come in the boxes of toys. The children of Holland take pleasure in making what the children of Boston take pleasure in breaking. Only I shall put Plumfield instead of Boston. We never will again, truly, truly," cried the repentant little sinners, much abashed at this reproof. "Demi told us to," said Rob. "Well, I heard Uncle tell about the grease people who had altars and things, and so I wanted to be like them, only I hadn't any live creatures to sacrifice, so we burned up our toys." "Dear me, that is something like the bean story," said Aunt Joe, laughing again. "Tell about it," suggested Daisy, to change the subject. "Well, once there was a poor woman who had 3 or 4 little children, and she used to lock them up in her room when she went out to work to keep them safe. One day when she was going away, she said, 'Now, my dears, don't let baby fall out of the window, don't play with matches, and don't put beans up your noses.' Now, the children had never dreamed of doing that last thing, but she put it into their heads. And the minute she was gone, they ran and stuffed their naughty little noses full of beans, just to see how it felt. And she found them all crying when she came home." "Did it hurt?" asked Rob, with such intense interest that his mother hastily added a warning sequel lest a new edition of the bean story should appear in her own family. "Very much, as I know, for when my mother told me this story, I was so silly I went and tried it myself. I had no beans, so I took some pebbles and poked several into my nose. I didn't like it at all and wanted to take them out again very soon, but one would not come, and I was so ashamed to tell what a goose I had been that I went for hours with that stone hurting me very much. At last the pain got so bad I had to tell, and when my mother could not get it out, the doctor came. Then I was put in a chair and held tight, Rob. When he used his ugly little pincers till the stone hopped out, dear me, how my wretched little nose did ache, and how people laughed at me." And Mrs. Joe shook her head in a dismal way, as if the memory of her sufferings was too much for her. Rob looked deeply impressed, and I'm glad to say took the warning to heart. Demi proposed that they should bury poor Annabella, and in the interest of the funeral, Teddy forgot his fright. Daisy was soon consoled by another batch of dolls from Aunt Amy, and naughty Kitty Mouse seemed to be appeased by the last offerings, for she tormented them no more. Brops was the name of a new and absorbing play invented by Bangs. As this interesting animal is not to be found in any zoological garden, unless Dachilla has recently brought one from the wilds of Africa, I will mention a few of its peculiar habits and traits for the benefit of inquiring minds. The brop, B-R-O-P, is a winged, quadruped, with a human face, of a youthful and merry aspect. When it walks the earth, it grunts. When it soars, it gives a shrill hoot. Occasionally, it goes erect and talks good English. Its body is usually covered with a substance much resembling a shawl, sometimes red, sometimes blue, often plaid, and strange to say, that frequently change skins with one another. On their heads they have a horn very like a stiff brown paper lamplighter. Wings of the same substance flap upon their shoulders when they fly. This is never very far from the ground, as they usually fall with violence if they attempt any lofty flights. They browse over the earth, but can sit up and eat like the squirrel. Their favorite nourishment is the seed cake. Apples also are freely taken, and sometimes raw carrots are nibbled when food is scarce. They live in dens where they have a sort of nest, much like a clothes basket, in which the little brops play till their wings are grown. These singular animals quarrel at times, and it is on these occasions that they burst into human speech, call each other names, cry, scold, and sometimes tear off horns and skin, declaring fiercely that they won't play. The few privileged persons who have studied them are inclined to think them a remarkable mixture of the monkey, the sphinx, the roc, R-O-C, and the queer creatures seen by the famous Peter Wilkins. This game was a great favorite, and the younger children beguiled many a rainy afternoon flapping or creeping about the nursery, acting like little bedlamites and being as merry as little grigs. To be sure, it was rather hard upon clothes, particularly trouser knees and jacket elbows, but Mrs. Bear only said as she patched and darned, "We do things just as foolish and not half so harmless. If I could get as much happiness out of it as the little dears do, I'd be a brop myself." Nat's favorite amusements were working in his garden and sitting in the willow tree with his violin, for that great nest was a fairy world for him, and there he loved to perch, making music like a happy bird. The lads called him Old Chirper because he was always humming, whistling, or fiddling, and they often stopped a minute in their work or play to listen to the soft tones of the violin, which seemed to lead a little orchestra of summer sounds. The birds appeared to regard him as one of themselves and fearlessly sat on the fence or lit among the boughs to watch him with their quick, bright eyes. The robins in the apple tree nearby evidently considered him a friend, for the father bird hunted insects close beside him, and the little mother brooded as confidingly over her blue eggs as if the boy was only a new sort of blackbird who cheered her patient watch with his song. The brown brook babbled and sparkled below him. The bees haunted the clover fields on either side. Friendly faces peeped at him as they passed the old house, stretched its wide wings hospitably toward him, and with a blessed sense of rest and love and happiness, Nat dreamed for hours in this nook, unconscious what healthful miracles were being wrought upon him. And I know I didn't read a whole lot, but still got sinus issues, and boy, is my throat sore. So I hope this goes up before my live, and I hope to see you guys there. Be sweet, don't be ugly. Love ya.